up for you. Folks, I get goosebumps talking about this. I literally spent 16 hours this weekend on the phones and reading through material sent to me to put this together for you, to expose to you what I'm telling you is the biggest scandal in U.S. history. They never thought Trump would win. They never thought any of this spying was going to see the daylight. When Trump won, they panicked. Nobody knew what to do. When Trump won, they freaked out. They realized all this was going to come out. So they needed a diversion. And Joe, what was the diversion? Russian collusion.
Yeah.
Damn it. That was the whole time. This is what they invented. They invented a fake story. By the way, convenient, John Carlin, the guy in DOJ, NSD, National Security Division, who knew all of this about the spying, Joe, who resigns right as Mike Rogers finds out what's going on.
Uh-huh.
Who do you think John Carlin was chief of staff to before he was the head of DOJ, National Security Division? Bob Mueller, the head of the special counsel? Whoa. I don't know. You put two and two together.
Come on, dude.
I'm Joseph. You read the show notes today. I'm telling you, everything I'm telling you is true. Let me throw one more angle out at you. Who else do you think knows what's going on here because of his position in the federal government beforehand? Let me just suggest to you, maybe it's Mike Flynn. Who's Mike Flynn? Mike Flynn is appointed Trump's national security advisor when Trump's elected. Flynn was the head of the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. Does he know everything that's going on due to the sensitive and compartmentalized nature of the information? He probably doesn't know everything, the extent of the spying, Joe. But, I'm telling you, he knows something. So conveniently, right at the time of the Mike Rogers meeting, Joe, up at Trump Tower where Trump flees, what happens the very next day to Rogers? I'll get to Flynn in a second, but this is important. The very next day, the Obama administration officials start calling for the termination of Mike Rogers at the NSA. Why would that happen? Maybe because Mike Rogers is the hero in this entire story and the Obama team realizes they've just been outed to Trump. Here's the problem, though. And I'm surmising here a bit because I want to be fair to you. I don't think they had anything on Rogers outside of the fact that he was exposing them. In other words, they didn't have anything on him to get him on easy. So he was going to be a difficult person to lock up. It would also be very suspicious. Flynn, on the other hand, they needed a setup. So what's the setup on Flynn? Who, by the way, Joe, keep in mind, why set up Flynn? Because I'm telling you, he knows not everything Rogers knows, but he knows a lot about how the Trump team was being spied on.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they nail Flynn? The Fusion GPS dossier, the fake Russian intel, it's phony, provided to the Democrats, finds its way into the DOJ through Nellie Orr, who's married to Bruce Orr, who's an upper-level manager in the DOJ who has access to DOJ officials, including DOJ NSD John Carlin before. Nellie Orr works for the company that's being paid by the DNC to gather fake Russian intel on Trump. You following?
Yeah.
That fake Russian intel through Nellie Orr and Fusion GPS gets over to Bruce Orr, her spouse, who's working at DOJ in an upper-level management position, who meets with them at Fusion GPS. They then use that information to reapply for a spying warrant through the FISA court that was denied to them in June. They get it in October. They get the ability to spy. All of a sudden, they have recordings and phone calls. But here's the kicker. And here's where I think you're going to totally reevaluate what happened to Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn takes a couple-day vacation, Joe, after all this, to the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
Mike Flynn in the Dominican Republic doesn't have the network of secure comms obviously he has in the United States. All of a sudden, the Obama administration repossesses a Russian facility in the United States and kicks out the Russians. They do it right around the time Flynn is over in the Dominican Republic. Flynn starts getting calls as the incoming national security advisor from the Russian ambassador. Flynn knows he's being monitored, but they record the calls. Nothing illegal happens on the calls. Those calls are recorded. Now, although I can't prove it, I think the suspicious timing of kicking out the Russians, knowing the Russians would call Flynn while he's in DR, strange. You figure it out. The call's recorded, Joe. Flynn's in the White House in the transition. In the White House, the FBI comes over under the guise that they're going to talk National Security Council FBI coordination. Nobody tells him this is a criminal interview. He has no lawyer present. The FBI, Joe, in the interview led by Peter Strzok.
Right.
Peter Strzok, who's having an affair with Lisa Page, and texts to Lisa Page, a DOJ lawyer, that they need an insurance policy in case Trump is elected, and is a known Trump hater, Peter Strzok, for the FBI, leads the interview. Oh, that's fair. Excellent. Sounds legit. Peter Strzok has the transcript. The other person in the interview with Strzok, they interview Flynn about his call with the Russian ambassador. Keep in mind, completely blindsiding him. The other agent in the room, you will never look at Flynn the same way after this. The other agent in the room goes back and tells Andy McCabe, who's supervising this investigation, the number 2 at the FBI, whose wife is a noted Democrat who took hundreds of thousands of dollars from Hillary Clinton consiglieres. The number 2 in the room, Joe, I see you nodding your head. The number 2 in the room with Flynn goes back and tells Andy McCabe that Flynn was open and honest. Nothing to see here. Wait. Well, why was Flynn then prosecuted for false statements to the FBI?
Right.
Because Strzok tells Andy McCabe, hey, I'm not so sure. McCabe and them turn around and decide to prosecute anyway because what was said in the interview didn't marry up exactly to the transcript, which, Joe, if I had a transcript of a conversation with you I had this weekend, I would never be able to marry it up. I'm telling you, Flynn was taken out legally because he knows exactly what I'm telling you right now. And these charges and investigation being held over his head by Mueller's special counsel are a way to shut him up from exposing everything Mike Rogers and him knows. Now, the final piece of the puzzle. Devin Nunes, who's on the Gang of Eight. The Gang of Eight that has oversight authority over counterintelligence operations show. Devin Nunes in March of 2017, right after the Trump DNI, Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, right afterwards, after DNI Coates is approved by the Senate, his nomination, immediately afterwards, that's important. Don't forget that fact. Devin Nunes, congressman from California who has oversight authority over counterintelligence operations, goes over to a skiff on the White House grounds, the only place the information would be available because of the compartmentalized nature of it. Remember, Joe, these computers are not connected.
Right.
He has to see it at the White House, but he only can see it after the DNI is approved. Coates, who smells something wrong here and is probably notified by Rogers that something's up. Nunes goes over to the White House and reads on their computer, the only place he can see it. He reads an account of what happened, Joe, so disturbing that he immediately walks out in front of the cameras and gives a press conference about how disturbed he is about what he saw in that room and that it had nothing to do with the Russians. What happens to Devin Nunes right after that? Democrats in the House open a disingenuous ethics investigation, which, by the way, he was cleared of just recently. And he's kicked off the investigation temporarily. Folks, I'm not messing with you, man. I'm not messing with you when I tell you that this is only the most important, critical, consequential, deeply impactful junction we have right now in American history. I don't know how any of us can go forward knowing what I told you and expect to have any semblance of a constitutional republic left. What I just told you is true. Where I had to speculate, I was clear. I will put the article in the show notes. Do yourself the biggest favor you've ever done yourself and take a half an hour and read it start to finish. Do yourself a favor and read it twice. Matter of fact, read it 3 times. And by the 3rd time, I think it's going to blow you away that we have now turned the federal government under the Obama administration into a third world government-enforced spying apparatus against their political enemies. Dispute anything I told you in this show. I'll see you tomorrow.
You just heard the Dan Bongino Show. Get more of Dan online anytime at conservativereview.com. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud. And follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 at DBongino.